Hi everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome back to my channel and another paper crafting video tutorial. Today I have a couple of blue Christmas cards to share with you using brand new products from the Simon Says Stamp Stamptember 2024 release. These holiday cards are all in shades of blue instead of the traditional reds and greens. I love this colorway as it gives a frosty, wintry feel. We're going to start with the Dottie Whirlpool embossing folder and an A2 size cardstock panel. I'm going to place this 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panel in my Dottie Whirlpool embossing folder and run it through my die cutting machine. To do this, I use the Spellbinders Platinum with the base, the embossing folder with the cardstock, and one of the cutting plates. It's going to be a tight fit, but it will leave you with beautiful results. Once we have our embossed background, I'm going to grab the glass mat, from Simon Says Stamp to do the blackout technique without black ink. I wanted to see what would happen if I flipped my panel over to the reverse and used these Distress Oxide inks from Tim Holtz and did more of a ink blend blackout technique, I suppose. I absolutely love the results. So you can see I'm just using the ink pad direct to paper and rubbing that color in. We have some Blueprint Sketch, Mermaid Lagoon, and Peacock Feathers. I'm even going to go back then with some more of my Mermaid Lagoon and the Peacock Feathers until I get the blend I want. I found that this technique worked beautifully, and I'm definitely going to do it again because I love the results for something a little different than that awesome black that we see so much of. I'm going to go ahead and clean up my glass mat, move this out of the way for a second, and then we can continue working on our background and of course building that beautiful wintry scene with the peaceful trees, stamps, and dies. If you watched my video from yesterday, and I will link to it at the end of this video, I talked a lot about stamping on vellum, and I wanted to show you the effect here. I also will be stamping the Peaceful Trees border and individual trees on vellum as opposed to on the white cardstock. It covers up so much of the background, and I think you really lose some of that wintry feel. Vellum is absolute magic on a card. It's been around forever. This isn't anything new, but I have really found that I am loving using it again in certain situations, especially like this or like the Halloween cards from the previous video, because it allows you to see through it enough and it doesn't feel like it overwhelms the design. So I have stamped the border on some vellum here, and I'm going to sprinkle on white embossing powder. The white is really going to play off of the beauty of the Dottie Whirlpool background and those white whirly snowflakes, and I think it's really going to work beautifully here. In addition to white embossing powder, we will also be using some silver, but that's going to be here in just a little bit. This is a big image. I do recommend using a stamp positioner tool to get really good coverage prior to sprinkling on your embossing powder. And I even saw somewhere that I felt like I missed. Now for the vellum, I will be embossing the front and the back. One of the beautiful things about this particular image is that it is nice and big. Thus, we are going to have some pretty solid embossing, I guess is how I want to say this. And it's going to allow me to hide foam adhesive back behind the image, which is what I'm looking for. So once I have my image, I am going to take the Coordinating Peaceful Trees die and run this through my die cutting machine. Once we have this and you lay it on the background, it instantly transforms the entire card. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? You get the little peaks of blue through the vellum, and I just feel like the white works really, really nicely here. And here's what it would look like if you turned it on its side. And it will fill the entire A2 space if you have it in landscape format. I am going to keep this in the vertical portrait style. So on the back of my card, I do want to add even more frosty fun. We're going to take some Frozen Frog Distress Mica Stain first and make sure that it is really good and mixed up, and we're going to spritz this all over. It's going to add to the shimmery sparkle of this holiday themed card. When it dries, it's going to dry nice and silver shimmery, and I love that. Now, I did speed up the drying process a little bit with my heat tool. I don't always do that. It does dry pretty fast, but I wanted to hurry and get that completely dry. That looks fantastic. Here is how our trees are going to look against that. I'm going to go ahead and put foam adhesive all over the back of the white solid areas. This is really the magic of this design, is lifting those things up, giving you that instant shadow for this wintry wonderland background. So I am simply just being very careful with how and where I am placing all of those foam adhesive squares, and then I'm going to peel off the backing and pop this in place on my background. You will see that even though this is vellum, the solid area of the embossing is going to allow us to hide those foam squares beautifully. I tested it, of course, first because I wanted to make sure. We're going to center it kind of with that tallest tree mostly in the center. It's going to hang off each of the sides just a little bit. And one of my foam squares came off on my finger. And then I'll simply flip it over and trim away any of that excess. And that's just going to clean up those edges perfectly. Look at that beautiful wintry scene. Oh, I love it. Now I noticed an area here along the side, but I think it's going to be fine once we get everything else in place. So now I am ready to do my sentiments, and it's the same thing. I really don't want to cover up the beauty of the background. If I stamped on white cardstock or a colored cardstock, I think it's really going to detract and take away from the design, especially because I kind of want to fill that upper third area with my sentiments. Now, originally, I thought I would do the word peace in white, and then I did the smaller phrases that go with this in silver. Note, they did not show up, so I did restamp them, re-die cut, and I am going to adhere those, or emboss those, pardon me, with white as well. The white really just showed up the best. But to get around the fact that I really did want to include some silver embossing, I knew I wanted to add some extra trees. You can see that laying out on my card, hanging out there at the top of the screen. I will be stamping and embossing those with some of the silver embossing powder, and I think that is going to work out perfectly. There are coordinating dies for the peaceful trees for many of the greetings. The smaller, thinner sentiment strip, there is not, but for the scripty style and large dies, there is. So now I'm simply stamping the trees. I'm going to do one of the larger tree and two of the smaller trees, and then emboss those with the silver embossing ink. And I think that will create a beautiful contrast of foresty winter trees for our card border. Let's go ahead and sprinkle on our embossing powders. And I went ahead and just did all of these at once. You can see I'm being really careful with where I'm applying the embossing powder to the text because I want the trees to be in silver. Vellum tends to be a little more pliable than just regular traditional cardstock, so it's kind of a little easier in this case. Okay. Next, I'm just going to clean up. I noticed a few embossing flakes on my work table. We're going to emboss. I love the magic of embossing. It doesn't matter how many times I do it. It is incredible to watch these beautiful images come to life. Then we're going to die cut with the coordinating dies, just like before, lining up the word sending. Our sentiment will read, "Sending peace to you and yours." I always like to use a little of the Post-it tape. I do reuse mine often until it loses the sticky to make the most of any of these repositionable tapes. So now that we have our images and sentiments die cut, I'm going to lay out the silver trees and the greetings on the background, and I love that contrast of the silver trees with the white. I think it sets it off perfectly and brings out the frozen fog distress mica stain. We'll go ahead and die cut a couple, or the remaining 2 pieces. I did use a sentiment label die for the rest of the greeting that didn't come with a coordinating die. Now it's time to put it all together and include some of the beautiful new Northern Lights sequins. We're also going to include those. Those are part of this Stamp Timber release. Just cleaning a little glue off the nozzle of my glue press. And again, I'm going to hide my liquid glue back behind the embossed areas. There isn't another really great way to attach these unless I want to use something like a Xyron. I don't think I even have any glue in my Xyron anymore. So generally I just try to hide my adhesive if I can't easily cover it up with something on top. So hiding it behind the embossed areas tends to work really well. I'm going to start with the phrase at the bottom, and then we're going to do our large piece and finish with the word sending on top. Using the vellum still allows us to see the beautiful whirling background and really have a fun effect. Now to add the silver trees on top. I want those to have a bit of dimension as well, and just like the border in the background, I can hide the foam adhesive back behind the solid embossing. So we're going to pop these trees up with foam right on top of the white tree border. Now this is going to make this card have quite a lot of dimension, 2 layers of foam, but it's still going to be easily placed into a standard A2 envelope. I'm going to kind of double up a couple of these silver trees over here along the left, kind of more on the left side. And I love how this looks. Now the final thing we want to add to this card are those Northern Lights flat sequins. I do make a quick little change and have 2 of the trees over on the right and 1 on the left. I don't know, that just seemed to balance a little bit better for me. Sometimes I move things around a little bit. I bet you guys do as well. Using the triangle trays from Simon Says Stamp, I'm easily going to pour out a few of my sequins. I like to add little dabs of glue with my glue press. I did switch out my glue after filming this. This one was a little empty. I'm using my embellishment wand to easily pick up and place all of these sequins. I love how they really just pick up whatever color you place them on. They add that little extra bit of sparkle and shine, almost like little falling snow. I love this Dottie Whirlpool embossing folder. I think you guys will too. There's going to be lots of fantastic ways to use this. And let's go ahead and create our second card now. This time we are going to use the Snowflake Stripes stencil, and we're also going to use the big holiday words, stamps, and coordinating dies. This is going to be a super simple background. I have an A2 panel of smooth white cardstock, and I have my wonderful Snowflake Stripes stencil. So what I'm going to do here, and what I love, is this can work for a landscape or a portrait style card. I decided I do want my snowflake to kind of be shifted over a little bit to the right, and you can play around with placement. If you want it more centered, you can totally do that. And I am going to start inking. Now the stripes are far enough apart that I'm easily going to be able to use two different colors in these two areas on my stencil. I decided to go ahead and use the same colors of Distress Oxide ink that I used for my first card, but of course this time adhering my ink with blending brushes. I am using the Altenew stamp wheel to hold my stencils and paper down in place while I apply that ink. We're going to ink up the bottom portion here, and that is a little prize ribbon. And then I'm going to skip a blueprint sketch for a minute and move right to Mermaid Lagoon, which is what is going to be that stripe second from the top. The next stencil will have the top and the middle piece. And I am doing a very heavy hand with my application. Next, we're going to grab our next stencil. And really, you can use this in a lot of different ways. So maybe you want to just stencil the big snowflake, or you want to do the big snowflake in another color. You can use it with these two stencils. I'm going to show you how I'll use mine to kind of in a different way than using an ink pad and a blending brush. That top stripe is peacock feathers. This second stripe from the bottom is blueprint sketch. So the only color I pulled in was prize ribbon that I didn't use on the first card. And all shades of blue again, that aqua to blue. So, so pretty. So now we're going to take our background and we are going to stamp it with a background stamp. Now I decided to go to my stash of Simon Says Stamp products and find a text background that would work with this background image. You guys know I absolutely love stamping my backgrounds with some sort of text. And this is a great one because there's lots of fun surface area that will really look fantastic. So this is the hand lettered holiday stamp set. This is a year, maybe 2 years old or so. I'm going to ink it up with the Simon Says Stamp white pigment ink and stamp that all over the background. I don't need to worry about masking off anything. It doesn't matter that the white will be on the white of the snowflake. I'm not going to ink the snowflake with another color of ink. So I'm going to stamp that really well. I might ink it up and stamp it twice depending on the coverage. Then I'm going to take this snowflake and I'm also going to take my stencil and I am going to place it in my spatter box and give it a really good spritz of the Frozen Fog Distress Mica Stain. Now, I really should have masked off that top little bit of my snowflake background. I kind of didn't realize it wasn't covered. It's obvious here in the video, but I did not. So we're going to let this dry really well, and then we will work on rectifying that situation. I'm also going to take some white splatter from Spellbinders. I do add a little water to it to help it move a little bit better, just like I would with gouache. And I'm going to take a paintbrush and spatter the background with some additional white snowflakes. This card is all about the backgrounds, much like the first card was. It's all about the backgrounds, and then you add some simple things to the top to set it off. So we're just gonna keep adding until we're happy with how that looks. We'll set this aside to completely dry. While drying, I am gonna take another piece of vellum and greetings from the Big Holiday Words Stamps and Dies. We're going to stamp those right on some vellum. I have joyful greetings, and then I also have a smaller sentiment. The great thing about the smaller sentiment, there are some dies in the set to die cut this. We're gonna just sprinkle that on with some white embossing powder and heat set this. Now, I did decide to do my other greeting on cardstock rather than vellum. Now, again, one of the main reasons I chose to use vellum for this is I want to still be able to see through it, but a sentiment strip will not detract or take away from the overall design. So we will stamp Sending Love and Light with our blueprint sketch ink, and then we're going to die cut that with the coordinating die. We're going to grab both of those dies, snip them out with some wire snips, and we'll be ready to finish this card. So now we're going to trim down the background a little bit with a paper trimmer. Now, full disclosure, I should have let my background dry just a little bit more. So I noticed that this little guide here or safety guide got messy, and so did my trimmer. So I'm wiping it clean with one of those Simon Says Stamp microfiber cloths. And I'm trimming 1/4 of an inch off of 2 sides. This will eliminate that overspray at the top. I actually might have to trim off more than 2 so that it's nice and even. I love how just the snowflake part is sparkly and the rest is the beautiful stripes with that very subtle text background. The white of the pigment ink just tends to blend into the background beautifully. So now I'm going to remove this double-sided tape from my card base, and we're going to attach our panel. We'll have a white border all the way around. I do think that that's super pretty with that white snowflake. We're going to do the same thing that we did for the previous card, where we're hiding our adhesive back behind the white embossing, and I want my sentiment to go right through the center of the snowflake. I like how it's almost that ghosted effect. You can still very easily read it, but it leaves the snowflake intact. Then we're going to take a thin strip of foam tape. I love these thin foam strips. We're going to snip it a little bit and pop our greeting in place. I love the rounded edges of these sentiment strips that come in the Big Holiday Words die set. We're going to pop that right underneath, and just like before, we're going to finish our card with a scattering of the Northern Lights sequence. Really simple, very easy and elegant, and an absolutely beautiful card. This is going to be a very easy card to mass produce as well, so if you're looking for a fun design that you could easily make many of, I think this would be a good one. I love cards that give you beautiful, elegant finishes every single time and are very easy to replicate because we all need lots of cards for the holiday season. So once we're all done with that, our 2 cards are finished. Here is a look at Joyful Greetings with that snowflake striped stencil, and of course our piece with the peaceful trees and that beautiful Dottie Whirlpool embossing folder. Thank you so much for joining me today for these 2 blue holiday cards featuring Simon Says Stamp Stamptember 2024 release products. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much for joining me today for another paper crafting tutorial. I love being able to share with this incredible community of crafters. I want to give a huge shout out and special thank you to my amazing Patreon members. If you're interested in joining Patreon, please click the link in the description underneath the video here on YouTube. Patreon is a private community where you can support more of what I do. There is exclusive content, information, and behind-the-scenes content. Top-tier members will receive a handmade birthday card during your birthday month, access to D-Stash, and monthly exclusive lives, plus so much more. We would love to have you join our growing community. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel, click that like button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to always be notified when I have a new video. Thanks for watching!